Okay, let's get into it. All right, gamers, it is time. Now, this released yesterday, so I appreciate ANET, for waiting for this, gamers. It's the studio update of Guild Wars 2 in 2023. Long-awaited studio update. Now, I was gone for the game for like 4 months, so for me, I didn't really have to wait that long, and then I was also still gone for most of this January and February-ish. I only came back recently. So it's very nice of ANET to actually wait for me to come back to streaming to actually release the studio update. That's what they did. They waited for Guild MM, the non-ANET partner, to get back to streaming so that they could release the studio update for me to enjoy on stream with you guys. So thank you, ANET, for that. Yeah, there's quite a lot in this update, actually. I looked at it, I read it, I've had time to kind of digest a lot of it, more than most people who maybe read it on the first site. And honestly, there's quite a lot of changes, something I did not expect. So, to give you a brief idea of the context of where we're at, Guild Wars 2 has been always in a very similar cycle. Living World Season, expansion. Living World Season, expansion. Last year, we had a bit of change, and just to keep it more close to the recent times. Last year, we had massive changes or 2021, sorry, we had massive changes in leadership. We had many new people coming back, or many of the old devs coming back to the game. Like Grouch, for example. Josh is, their game director. We've had many different people shift in roles. We also have Roy now, an ANET player now becoming an ANET dev. So quite a lot of changes. And that meant that after EOD, there was going to be more fine-tuning of the game. So instead of having EOD, then another season, we got more of fine-tuning, quality of life. And I honestly expected 2023 will just be all of 2022, just more fine-tuning, very little content. This actually changes everything. So, let's get started with the intro. Hello, Guild Wars community. Before our holiday break, we wrapped up 2022 by reflecting on what a fantastic year it was for Guild Wars 2. In the time between the studio update and New Year's Day, Guild Wars 2 and the Arena team earned several end-of-year awards from top gaming press, including PC Gamer's Best Ongoing Game, MMORPG's Player's Choice MMORPG of the Year, and Massively OP's Best MMO Studio 2 years in a row, back to back, hopefully 3 years in a row. Best MMO Expansion and Best MMO Business Model. Those were some exciting presents to unwrap. Again, a heartfelt thank you to our fantastic community for helping make last year the success that it was. Let's do it again. Oh, of course, let's do it. We closed the December studio update with a promise that we'll be back in early 2023 to talk about our long-term plans for Guild Wars 2. Today, we'll be talking about some big changes we're making to how we develop and deliver new content and features, including our approach to expansions, and we'll share our next development roadmap. This blog is absolutely jam-packed with information. Let's dig in. Defining the problem. Since 2021, we've put a renewed emphasis on developing Guild Wars 2 with a player-centric approach, where step one in our development process is to seek out and understand the problems and frustrations that MMO players face. This approach was first adopted at ArenaNet over 20 years ago and is at the core of the continued success of the Guild Wars franchise. The conclusion of the Elder Dragon saga, a story told over the course of a decade, was an opportunity for our team to reflect on our past before moving forward. I like that. We evaluated what has and hasn't worked over the years and used those insights to redefine how we develop and release content for our players. Our goals for the next phase of Guild Wars 2 are simple. We want to deliver content updates in a more timely and consistent manner, and we want to provide better support for the wide variety of systems and game modes that make up the Guild Wars 2 experience. Having the development bandwidth needed to iterate on core systems is especially important to us, and it's important that we've been making headway on over the last year with our quality of life improvement initiative. There's so many systems in Guild Wars 2 that have good bones, and they can be even better with just a bit of love. So I like that they actually have taken an approach to address that there are issues in how they've, struggled in the past to deliver content. There's always been the stop-start, momentum in Guild Wars 2, which has led to a lot of downtime. When the game first released, they decided to try to do this Living World season approach, which honestly at the time looked like it was an industry changer, free content, but I mean, not sustainable, honestly. And that is probably why we got into the state that the game got into over the years. Not to say that there hasn't been a lot of nice parts to it, but it has contributed to a lot of uncertainty all the time. And that's been always the issue with Guild Wars 2, uncertainty. So I think like addressing this is a good issue, and also talking about, timely manner, because what usually happens is we get an expansion, or let's go through the cycle real quick. Game release, Living World Season 1 was pretty much immediately after, so that took about a year to wrap up Season 1, and that was very frequent. That was actually the most frequent updates we had in the game over the course of a year. After Season 1, there was a good year of nothing. From, I think, early 2014 to not even like maybe just about the end of 2014 or start of 2015, they finally started the push for Heart of Thorns. Had a lot of good marketing to it, and then they kicked off Living World Season 2, which was sort of a way to get us to the story of Heart of Thorns. But that was a good year of nothing, right? Just very small content updates. Some quality of life updates actually happened in that time, so it's not really nothing. There were some quality of life updates that we got, such as like mega servers, merging of the wardrobe systems, a lot of big stuff that happened over that year. But you could say not exactly new content, right? Then we get Heart of Thorns in 2015, and then again, nothing until Living World Season 3, which is a good 6-7 months of there's nothing really to look forward to. And they released Season 3 close to almost about 8-9 months after. Season 3 releases and finishes just around the corner of Path of Fire, which was surprisingly released 2 years after Heart of Thorns. After Path of Fire, we actually, I think, didn't get Season 4 until a full year after Path of Fire. Or no, not full year after Path of Fire. We got Season 4 after Path of Fire by like 3 or 4 months, actually. And then that concluded early 2019. Then we also knew that there was the whole overhaul of the team. There was lots of layoffs, all of that. Was a lot of bad news. And then this is where there was a 6-7 month drought of where's the game going. And then we got the address of Icebrood Saga, which didn't work out well. So all of this, then we get Icebrood Saga. We're done with Icebrood Saga. We then finally get to EOD, which is a while later. And then here we are. All of that has had a problem over the course of being able to deliver an expansion, then do a lot of free updates, then deliver another expansion. Because there's not enough momentum to push it. And honestly, this is probably because of their business model. It favored the players a lot. I think that was probably the problem, is that it was too generous, is what ANET was trying to do. By giving you a lot of, free content, they pretty much missed out on a lot of money to make. Except when that free content, after the time duration has passed, then you have to purchase it. But still, it was a very confusing model. I think was mostly what everyone can agree is contributing to the problem of the game. So I like that they defined this. More timely manner is probably better, more consistent. What does that mean? The path forward. Well, the first step in accomplishing these goals was to rebalance how we allocate our development resources across the project. There we go. Historically, with a few exceptions, Living World seasons have required the focus of nearly the entire Guild Wars 2 development team to deliver them at the size, quality, and cadence that our players expect. This made it difficult to simultaneously develop expansions while supporting the game with regular content updates. It also meant that many areas of the game went under-supported. Very true. They can only focus on 1 or 2 things at a time when they have maybe 7-8 things in total to focus on. So if they're focusing on this specifically, you'll notice a drop in this, right? It was always, where does the attention need to be at a given time? Meaning something is going to have a big drought period or longer phases of time. In the next phase of Guild Wars 2's development, we're taking a more balanced approach that will allow us to provide more quality, more support for popular game modes, make frequent quality of life improvements to core gameplay systems like professions, deliver new features, and expand the world of Tier with satisfying immersive story updates. Core gameplay systems, there was something here that actually I this one I heard it from Teapot stream, but I don't know if it's this one, but something to do with professions, you know, or specializations. I honestly don't hope they do more specializations. We don't need. It's a good feature as an expansion. It's so annoying to have another set of specializations to balance the game around with the existing ones you have. Deliver new features. Well, we'll see what those kind of entail. And then immersive story updates. I mean, maybe this is something to read up on. So what does that mean for us? Our future expansions for Guild Wars 2 will be the backbone of this new approach. So this is what I was talking about, where I very much favor this approach. They're going to stop with the living world stuff and just focus on the money, which is expansions. Because let's be honest, in the game industry, expansions sells more than this living world season that they've been doing. It's easier to grasp. That's what the gaming industry has been accustomed to. That's what people are accustomed to purchasing. I get an expansion. That's it. This is what I'm going to get for my money. Done deal. Not one of this, oh, it's free if you log in for this time. And then after this time, it's, oh, you have to pay. Like, remove the confusion. Simplify the process. That's basically what this is. So rather than launching an expansion every 2 to 4 years with a season of living world in between, we'll be releasing smaller expansions more frequently at a slightly reduced price and adding additional content for those expansions through quarterly updates. Meaning that the next big release is only ever a few months away. So what I took of this is pretty much merging living world. They're basically doing away with living world, so it's out of the window, but it's being merged as expansion. So you'll get an expansion and then you'll get the living world episodes, you could say, but they're part of the expansion. So everything that you buy in the expansion, the quarterly updates after, are basically that expansion's money. So let's say all the living world, or not living world, I should stop using that word. All the quarterly updates after End of Dragons are basically you need to buy End of Dragons. That's it. You buy End of Dragons, you get everything up until this duration. And I believe when they release another expansion, there'll be more quarterly updates that you can only play if you buy that expansion. That is much simpler than not knowing when you're supposed to buy stuff, which I actually prefer. Oh yeah, I really much prefer this. So that's what I understood from this. The first release in an expansion cycle is a launch point for a new story arc. So, okay, so new story arc when the expansion releases. That will bring with it 2 new open world maps, 2 strike missions, new gameplay and combat features. This was the thing that I actually, everyone I think is talking about, like, what do they actually mean by this? Like, we need an example. I've seen a lot of people in Discords talk about, like, what would be an example of combat features, just to give an idea of like what they're trying to do with, right? Could it be interaction systems and mechanics in encounters? Could it be like, what could combat features entail? New masteries and new rewards. So 2 new open world maps, 2 strike missions on the release of the expansion with some of these, right? Not bad. And then in the following quarterly updates, we'll add another open world map. So that's a total of 3 open world maps for that expansion. Additional story chapters, challenge modes for the strike missions, and then a few fractal dungeon and challenge mode. Oh man. More regular fractal content. Finally, so we can actually have more fractal tournaments or fractal bounties. This I actually like. A new reward and additions to new systems introduced that in that expansion. So what I expect would then, once that expansion story is complete, the next expansion will be just around the corner. So what I get from this is, let's say Q1 launch the expansion with the 2 maps, 2 strike missions, gameplay features, combat features, new masteries, new rewards, right? Q2, which would just be 3 months later, they'd release another open world map. More story chapters, challenge modes for the strike missions, new fractal dungeon, and challenge mode, new rewards, and additions to the new systems introduced in that expansion. All right. And then I believe maybe there's Q3, it's like a break. And then maybe Q4 is literally the next cycle. So that would bring it about a year. And it actually depends how they split this. So it's maybe Q1 is the release of that expansion. Q2, the additional stuff. Then Q3, if there's anything to wrap up for. Then Q4 is a break. And the next quarter, which would be technically Q5, or you could say the new Q1, could be the next expansion. So you're looking at consistent releases from anywhere from a year to a year and a half, which is honestly, think about it. Like a year and a half, you get 2 strikes, fractal dungeon, challenge modes, new, like, instead of waiting, let's say 3 years for all of that to drop in one go, you're literally just getting it in a year and a half, just in bite-sized chunks. And then right as soon as that's done, boom, next one's right around the corner. I actually like this a lot more. That means there's less filler time and more content that you have to keep up with. And that's honestly what's literally been hindering the game, is that there's so much filler, there's so much downtime. Not even filler, just so much downtime. Like there's nothing to do after the expansion. You have to wait. There's a good 3-4 months you wait, and then they usually announce a Living World episode, and then by the time that releases, it's already been some months before the expansion. This is better. They'll release an expansion in chunks, so you get like maybe let's say 50-60% of the expansion, who knows, whatever percentage of the expansion, and then they finish it up in about the same year, and then boom, you're right next to the next expansion. I think long term, that's way more viable. You're getting consistent strikes, consistent fractals, new rewards, new systems, gameplay features. Honestly, I don't know what they could add with masteries, because I'll be honest, like what could you add? Like there's like the problem with masteries I have in the game is that a lot of stuff that they do are usually specific to the expansion, like and sometimes even Living World seasons. A lot of them were very specific to the seasons. Like you don't ever use some of the masteries outside of those maps. I don't know what they could do, right? Like, you know, in Path of Fire, they were very smart to use a lot of the mounts as just the masteries. In End of Dragons, they have like fishing, skiffs, the turtle, there is the Jade Bot one, and then of course you have like your Arbor Stone. So they're smart enough to use it for stuff that you'll probably need outside of End of Dragons. I don't know what they could even add for anything else going forward. Guild halls? Someone mentioned player housing that I know. I just don't find the, you know, masteries is a very interesting thing, because they need a sense of progression in leveling, and that's sort of our sense of leveling in the game, right? They don't add caps, like level 80 has been the cap, and masteries has been our sense of new progression for leveling. But I don't really know what they could really add quality of life masteries that we already, you know, a system for masteries that make them more interesting in the whole game. Yeah, I'm really interested to see what they do with this, because like this is like, I don't know, they've already done so much. Like what was there to do? Combat features, this is the one that a lot of players are also very question mark, because if they would have said specializations, if they meant specialization, they would have said it, and they didn't say it here. They did not say specializations. So I really feel like this is not specializations, and honestly, I don't want to see more specializations. It's already a lot to keep up with a core spec, and you already have 3 of each core spec. That's plenty to balance in the game, honestly. Like, I don't even know if you need to squeeze in another one. I really don't want to see a 4th specialization. That's a lot to balance around. So I think maybe instead of specializations, just add in the weapons, right? Or find a way to do like new trait lines without actually being a full spec, or add in maybe new skills, and so that way they don't have to deliver a full spec overhaul, but it's just like they have bits and pieces that they could do, the little details of every class. So like maybe finishing up some weapons for some classes that maybe could use some weapons, small trait lines here and there. So yeah, I think that would be better for them to do something like that. I really honestly, I hate when they like, I love that there, like, for a time there was a reason to be excited. Oh, new specs and stuff, but also getting a lot, man. Like even with EOD, like that's core plus 3, it's plenty, more than enough for them to balance for like years, honestly. Like, and it's still difficult for them to balance, right? So I think combat features, this, I'd love to see an example of what they really mean about this. I honestly would have thought maybe 3 would have been nice, because see, 2 strike missions, it's hard for me to see them doing another strike mission like Harvest Temple CM. And that is a very challenging one, right? Like if they would have said 3 or 4 strike missions, that means they could justify making one extremely difficult one and then 3 which are at different paces of difficulty, right? Still difficult, but different paces. I know the CMs are there, but you know, I don't know if they'll release something as challenging as a Harvest Temple CM, or like when they add the new challenge modes for the strikes that they will release. I don't know. But maybe we get one that's very much up to par. But it's a harder argument when you have fewer to release, you know? So then they have to really look at this, right? Because I would honestly prefer if there was one that's very difficult and one that's maybe still, I mean, a challenge mode should still be challenging. But then maybe the other one is a bit more like, I guess you could say Anka CM, or maybe a little bit over Anka CM, and then the one that's difficult could be like, you know, or just closer to HTCM or around the corner of that. But with 2 strike missions, it's very hard for them to maybe make them that difficult, even as a CM. Like the normal mode, fair enough. But then the CM has to be somewhat engaging. And with, you know, I thought maybe with 3, there's a better balance. 3 to 4 is a better balance because you can make one just batshit crazy and then the other 3 are, you know, varying degrees of difficulty. So I would have loved to maybe see 3 realistically. 2 is not too bad though, because 2 every year is honestly a great amount. Like 2 every year, you'll get the CMs with that. You'll get a fractal with that. So I actually quite like that, what they're doing here. You know, everything is streamlined in a year pace, meaning there's never downtime. I love that there's no downtime, because this has really been the most problematic thing for Guild Wars 2. And you know, the problem with it is, again, they couldn't juggle teams. You know, if one team is focusing on this, the way I understood it, all of them were just working on Living World, which is why stuff like PvP or WW doesn't get touched. And that means if they can just streamline everything like this, that means stuff like balance patches could be more frequent. Frequent updates to PvP, WW could be more frequent. It can open up even the doors maybe to other stuff, like other miscellaneous parts of the game that have big communities, like the guild hall communities. Like honestly, there's a lot to do with guild halls, right? Like maybe player housing, they could stick that in the home instance. They can do some changes like LFG, like the social systems aspects of the game, LFG guilds. Maybe they could then, by doing this and having a very streamlined approach, they will be able to even have that time dedicated to small, maybe guild, things like that, like where the smaller details really matter later. Like it allows them to maybe, I know, who knows, right? I'm not gonna assume, but it could give them that leeway, because this is a much more easier approach. And again, this is a business standpoint, and it needs to make money. I think it's fairly generous that they gave us Living World seasons for free. So I don't mind that I have to pay money for a product. I don't mind it. Like I mean, I've even and many people probably shared the same thing. Like we could have had maybe a sub model that could have made use of some stuff in the gem store that are honestly pointless. Like the, you know, consumable stuff like XPs or whatever. I'm okay for more money going into Anet's pocket. This is what you're getting for. This is what you pay. This is what you get. Simple as is, and then you get that over the course of the year. This is easier to market. This is just simple, you know, as a business standpoint, this is just very simple. This is how the industry's worked. Expansions have always worked well. Living World was ambitious, but unfortunately it's not worked. You know, it didn't work since the get-go. And the fact that they stuck with it that long is honestly surprising, but I understood they really wanted to make it happen. They wanted to deliver quality stuff, like stuff like Season 4, which is honestly an expansion level season, where they gave you 2 mounts. They gave you like a lot of big maps that are still usable till today, a lot of collections, but it's money they would have missed out on. It's money they left off the table, and because that money was left off the table, it didn't allow them to do more, you know? And hey, End of Dragons has proved once again, when they get an expansion to a good amount of, degree, like a good expansion that can deliver in some ways, money is there to be made. You know, they made 70 million if you watch that report that they had released. I think it was like on Reddit a week ago. Money talks, guys. Money talks. More money means more consistent updates like this. And then that also means maybe more resources that could go towards the other smaller parts of the game. So long term, I'm okay with this. Now, the spring roadmap. The next chapter of Guild Wars 2 End of Dragons arrives on February 28th with familiar allies like Detective Rama. Ah, yeah. And his hat at your side. You'll travel to a new location in Kanta and come face to face with a deadly foe that resides deep within the Jade Sea. That storyline will conclude a few months later with an update that introduces additional playable space to the map, adds meta events and boss encounters, and lays the groundwork for future to be announced adventures. So I believe this is basically like you bought End of Dragons, and this is basically the next update for End of Dragons, the quarterly reports that they're doing. And it starts February 28th, bro. That's this month. I actually didn't expect that this was happening this month. That is so soon. You know, I made someone told me like weeks ago, like, what do you predict for 2023? I was like, a lot of QOL. You'll be lucky if you get two episodes of season 6 or something. That's what I was thinking, right? I didn't even think that ANET was actually going to consider switching the entire model forward. I don't think everyone that I saw on Twitch, when I kept up a little bit on the stream, nobody thought of like ANET's gonna literally flip everything upside down. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I've seen any like, at least the ones that I watched, the big ones, right? Nobody really thought ANET was gonna switch everything upside down. So this is a huge change. They literally just flipped it all upside down. February 28th. So we're getting the, you know, expansion content that is along with End of Dragons, meaning you only need to buy End of Dragons to access this content. So it will be free to people as long as you have End of Dragons purchased. So you don't have to like log in like Living World at a certain time to get it for free. So that story will conclude a few months later, and then an update that introduces additional playable space to the map, adds meta events and boss encounters, and then puts the groundwork for the future to be announced adventures. So that means we could actually be getting the next expansion this year, if you think about it. Maybe end of this year, we could be getting the next expansion. Yeah, it could be this year, but even then, we're definitely getting it in 24 because they've announced that there will be one in 24. So if, let's say, we get consistent updates and that concludes a few months later, what's a few months later? Like, a few months later to me is, like, we're in February now, let's say May, June, right? Like 3 to 4 months. That's to me a few months later. Yeah. Summertime, yeah. The speculation on the information reviewed in this post over the past few months has been hilarious. It's like, yeah, I don't think anyone called that they'll actually, because what they've done, they haven't just changed like what they're gonna deliver. They changed their entire business plan. This is literally a revamp of their business model of the game. Like, they flipped everything upside down. Right? I hope people actually understand the magnitude, like the degree of like just how big this insane change they just did. This is absolutely like a huge company structure overhaul and how they're gonna go forward. So yeah, like I don't think anyone expected this. So yeah, a few months later makes me think it's May or June is where we're getting like maybe the next updates, and then maybe expansion this year, honestly. I mean, that's what a few months later to me means, right? May, June max, 3 to 4 months. That's what a few months should be. All right. So unlike a Living World release, all owners, like I said, like of Guild Wars 2 End of Dragons, will gain access to this content, meaning there's no pressure to log in and unlock it, and no gem cost for missing story chapter unlocks. So you buy End of Dragons, again, simplify the process. This is an expansion, you paid for it, you get this and this. Done. Just so easy to market. So yeah. So hey, February 28th, and I expect we'll probably, because next week is February 21, we'll probably get the next big thing next week. So we're not even done. I'm pretty sure you're gonna have to be ready next week for the big news to tell us what arrives on the 28th, like a mini teaser or something. So guys, we're not really done. In the first half of the year, we'll release the Suwon Legendary Weapon Skin Variant Collection. Okay, so this is some stuff that we know they'll release. 2 Profession Balance updates. This is the first half of the year, so that means up to June. up to June, more or less. 2 profession balance updates. That's very frequent, actually, considering we're just getting one today. A new fractal dungeon and challenge mode. So we're getting one soon, actually. Yeah, this is happening in the same cycle of how they just described all the release of content. And multiple updates for World versus World. I really hope that also means alliances, because this has been, you know, I really hope it's alliances as well. You know, I expect alliances released this year. Yeah, I would say this year. Maybe not first half, but maybe second half of this year. Hopefully. Second half of this year, if I'm being optimistic, I think alliances happens end of this year. Additionally, we'll finish rolling out the DirectX 11 and Chromium embedded framework upgrades. Yes, my trading post will be insane now. And run our usual festival and bonus events. We also have some quality of life updates in the works, including a long requested feature that will allow you to queue up for PvE maps. This is big. Oh my god, I can't count the amount of times I wish I knew if I could make it into a map if I was wasting my time. We might have a few surprises in store for you as well. Oh, so keep in touch there. Here's a high-level look at our upcoming release. The timing for some of the updates and betas listed above will be announced closer to their release dates. February 14, Profession Balance Update. WW Objective Reward Scaling, which I believe this release, I mean, this is today. This is today. Chromium Embedded Framework Upgrade. Yeah, this today. 28th of February, new Guild Wars 2 End of Dragons map and story content. Suwon Legendary Variant. March 28th, you got your your usual Super Adventure Festival, SAB. Yeah. April 18, DX11 upgrade complete. So within the next 2 months, actually, we should be getting this done. The full engine upgrade is done. May 2nd, Profession Balance Update. Another profession one. So then that means we get maybe one in end of June. Or maybe they're counting the 2 profession balances, including this one. So maybe that was the second one they were talking about. In the background, we'll be quietly working on what's to come in the second half of the year. We'll have more to share on that later. Wrap up. We're excited about the new phase of, or the next phase of Guild Wars 2. Both the things we're able to share today and what's over the horizon. The changes we've outlined will allow us to provide a better experience to our fans, release new content updates, and more consistently ensure that Guild Wars 2 will be around for many, many years to come. See you in game. Josh, the man Grouch Davis, game director. Oh, by the way, I feel like, what do you guys think this is? I feel like this is like a world boss or like some strike encounter or fractal encounter maybe. What do you guys think this is? Maybe a fractal encounter. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Fractal encounter. What do you guys think this is? Guys, I'm actually very happy about this. I would rather much prefer they release stuff at a more consistent manner, even if it means we're getting it in bite-sized chunks, than waiting 2 to 3 years to get it all in one go. I would much rather we're getting it more consistently and spread out, because that means, again, release an expansion. Q1 is the expansion. Q2 is upgrades to that expansion or more the next maps. Q3 is the wrap up. Q4 maybe is the break, and then Q5 or Q1 the cycle begins. Done. You get the next phase. I like that. That's a year and a half basically. That is perfect, honestly. You get 3 maps. So if you think about it, you're getting 3 maps. And I actually like that they're reducing the map, because honestly, I don't really need to see a map for every single release. If you have one map, I actually like the IBS season kind of maps where they expand gradually over time. I actually really like it. Also like core season 2 maps. So I really like it like that way, where it's a map expands and you have the meta event progress over time, and then you add additional stuff to it. I think that's probably better than having to create a new map every single time. So yeah, I much prefer that. Honestly, that is a much better system. So yeah, 3 maps, 2 strikes, 1 fractal. You get the CMs, rewards, gameplay features, new masteries. I want to see what they mean by combat features, because they mentioned combat features that they wouldn't just put that in without something. So anyway, gamers, that's the studio update. Let me know what you think. I actually think this is much better for the game in the long run. Gets more money for Guild Wars 2. More money means more content, more resources, more support for the game. I think in the long run, I would not mind that. And I think someone even did the math. Let's say if it was, they said it would be on the cheaper side. The expansions will be much cheaper. That means, if you think about it, that means if, let's say the expansions usually cost you $50. Let's say they make them $30. Divide that by 12. You're paying like $2.50 sub fee, basically. That's much cheaper than a lot of other games like Final Fantasy, like World of Warcraft. And you're getting the same system that those games have, where they release an expansion and then they do frequent patch 10.0 or whatever, right? Like World of Warcraft, typical with them, and even most MMOs, typical where they'll release an expansion and there's patch upgrades to that expansion. That's just the way it is. But this is cheaper because let's say it's $30 because they said the expansions will be cheaper. $30. Let's say some people even went as far as to say $20. I think like that's a little generous. But let's just say $30. Divide that by 12 months. $2.50. That's actual good money there for the content that we'd get. So honestly, for me, this is a win. Let me know what you think. Until then, take care, gamers, and I'll see you when I see you. That's